Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Women in Leadership Talk podcast. Today, I have a special guest. We're going to talk about when your career starts to itch, you got to scratch. I love that, Randi. So, Randi Roberts, welcome. Thanks for joining us all the way from Pennsylvania. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Thanks, Vicki. I'm so glad to be here.
Well, I think we have an exciting conversation planned, and we're going to get right into that. But I want to take a moment and thank our audience for joining us. And we know, I always say this, but we know you have a choice as to what podcast you listen to, and we're super grateful that you will choose Women in Leadership Talk. And please do share with your friends so that they know we're here, and we keep providing great content, great speakers to help you really start to make a shift in your life or in your careers. So let me tell you a little bit about Randi before we get started. Randi has spent over 30 years in the corporate world, starting as a sales representative and achieving executive roles. She has walked the same path as her clients. She knows that the pride you take in every accomplishment may be offset by questions about such things as, how can you best juggle competing priorities? How can you achieve your next promotion? The best way to lead and motivate your team, and maybe even whether this is really making you happy, even though it's what you've always wanted. She dives into these discussions both with her clients and on her own podcast, the Fulfilling Career Happy Life podcast. So Randi's own career fulfillment comes from witnessing the amazing transformations her clients actually go through. At the heart, she's a hippie with an Ivy League education. She's earned her MBA from the Wharton School of Business, a BA in sociology from San Diego State University, and she's now an executive and career life coach, certified by the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. That's also my own school, which I absolutely love. And Randi and I were just talking about IPEC. We love them. When she's not working, you can find her recharging her batteries by spending time outdoors, practicing yoga, reading, or catching up with her friends. So Randi, sounds like you have a full life, and we're thrilled to have you join us today. And let's jump in. I know we've got, a great conversation planned, but I think it's important for our audience to hear, what's led you down the path you're on today.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, I had a 30-year career. My corporate career was in pharmaceuticals, and I loved it. Like, I was one of those crazy people that jumped out of bed every morning before the alarm, couldn't wait to get to work, had to remind myself at the end of the day that I had a family waiting for me. I had to leave. I just considered myself very fortunate that I loved it so much, and I did so well. The thing that I realized about myself was that I really need to do some good while I'm doing well. Both of those things are really important to who I am. And in pharma, it was really clear to me that, the good we did was to help make people healthier, to help extend lives. But the higher up I went in a huge company, the more internally focused you become. And I was too far away from serving that good that I needed to do. And it felt like one day I woke up and just needed to be doing something different. It wasn't energizing me the way it used to. And so lots of soul searching, lots of twists and turns. What I ended up with was my next career. Always knew this would be my next career. Moved on to being an executive coach at the things that you described, running my own coaching business. And the good that I do now is helping other people achieve their goals. And so I do a lot of work with executives, seeking to overcome challenges, seeking to be their best leaders. I work with leadership teams to be more productive, to deliver at a higher degree for their companies. It's so satisfying to me now to, deliver that for people, help support people to achieve those things. And I'm fortunate my business is successful. So again, I'm doing the good while I'm doing well. And just that need to do some good, it has been satisfied in different ways throughout my life. So
Love it. Love it. Love it. It's interesting when you were saying you just kind of knew, like you realized one day, I love pharma, but it's just not giving me the energy or the fulfillment that I once had. And I'm hearing that from more and more people where they've had these incredible careers or have incredible careers, but they're looking for that purpose. They're searching for what's next. And so that, kind of leads us into scratching that itch,
Yeah.
which I loved how you termed that. So what happens when, because I think it's a little bit subtle, Randy, and maybe we talk about that a little bit. How do you know that the itch is even started?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And it does show up differently for different people, but it's important because the sooner you catch it and start to
Mm,
work on it, the more you can be the driver of it, figuring things out and doing it on your own terms before it becomes overpowering. I think the way it showed up for me was I was hitting the snooze button. I
mm,
wasn't jumping out of bed anymore, eager to get to work. I still liked it, but it wasn't a drive anymore. So that was one thing. I think for a lot of people, it's important to pay attention to how you're reacting to things, not how you're thinking about it, how you're approaching it, but how are you reacting? What is your heart? What is your body telling you? Because that often is the most pure indication of what the impact is. And so, are you becoming more short-tempered? Are you, becoming irritated with things that may be coming your way? Are you just less energized? If someone, you know, brings you a meaty, woolly problem that they don't know how to solve, are you excited to dive in and figure it out? Or are you feeling like this is your problem, you figure it? Those
mm.
kinds of reactions can tell you a lot of where you are on that scale of engagement.
Yeah, wow. And you said a lot there that's super important and really identified some key indicators, right? Like, I remember for myself when I was in the corporate world, I used to say to my team, when you wake up and you look in the mirror and you go, oh, I don't want to go in today, that's the day you need to come and talk to me because we need to talk about what's next for you, right? Because there are those subtle signs that come up, and sometimes it's not subtle. Like, you talked about the body talk. What is your body telling you? And that's how it hit me physically. My body shut down and said, yeah, no, we're not doing that anymore. Right. And so I love the examples that you've given, because that helps our audience start to have more awareness about what messages are showing up, and is it temporary, or are they signs that it might be time for change?
I think that's a great point because sometimes something situational can happen. You may
Yeah.
get a new boss and you're finding your groove. There may be the company may have taken a hit. Something may have happened that creates a different environment there. So it may be situational, which still needs attention, but maybe in a different way than, wow, has my long-term goal, is this no longer fitting me? And do I
Hmm.
need to think about making that change on a longer term?
Hmm. Yeah, and that's a really good point, especially when you're just talking about the environmental change, right? Is it personality dynamics, or we're trying to find our groove? And oftentimes I'll hear clients talk about that, and they'll say, oh, I'm just going to quit. I'm going to go find somewhere else, right? And wherever you go, there you are, right?
I
So
say that all the time, Vicky.
do you?
Yeah, I do.
So it is really taking that step back and asking yourself those questions. Like, is this a permanent situation, or is it a temporary or situational? Jokingly, I had said to you, are we getting the 7-year itch? Because there is this trend or pattern that I've been seeing, and I'd love for us to just talk about this a little bit, but it seems like, we don't stay in our careers as long as we used to. And we're, especially our younger generations, for them, it's like, okay, 2 years, I haven't gotten promoted, I'm going to move on. Right. So let's talk a little bit about that, Randy. What are your thoughts? What are you seeing?
I have seen that dynamic for sure. I think maybe it's generational thinking. I tend to think that, people who are in the earlier stages of their career, in so many ways, they're smarter than I was in terms of figuring out the need for balance and what they need and whatever. That needs to be balanced a little bit by what could lean into a sense of entitlement of,
Mm.
I need this coming at me. I need it coming at me on this time frame. And there's a lot you need to deliver to warrant that, to make that feel appropriate. And at some point it may not come as fast as you need it to. So I think looking at expectations and sort of testing them in the world and making sure that's realistic is really important. But yeah, I don't think the 7-year itch, I don't think people have the attention span for 7 years anymore. I think it happens sooner, which is why I'm such a big proponent in being proactive and thinking about what's important to you. How does what you've chosen to do match with that? Is this going to serve you long term, so that you're essentially playing chess with your career, not checkers? Like you're thinking several moves ahead. And in that way, you're making the decisions that fit you best. You will be solving the right problem
Mm.
rather than moving to the next thing, and to your point, taking yourself with you. And you'll be doing it on your time frame. So for example, if you're thinking ahead on what may be the right moves for you down the line, what will fit best for where you are in your life and where you want to take your life, you will be prepared if a situation comes up, like your boss changes and you're not clicking.
Yeah.
Then you're not, oh my God, I've got to get out of here, if that's the right answer. It's been planned out, thought out, and you're doing it on your terms.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I had a guest on recently where we were talking about that as well. And so often people don't take the time to even map their career, right? It's more of it just happens to you versus really being intentional and thinking about, what is it that you want to accomplish and what does fulfill you. So, Randy, why do you think a lot of people will hesitate in um, acknowledging, number one, or making that move when that itch starts to scratch?
Yeah. I think there's a couple of reasons. I think sometimes we get so busy and we get our heads down and we're doing the day to day. And, most of us are really busy people. You don't take the time necessarily to think ahead about what's next. Now, a lot of companies have very well established processes for that career development, and they're terrific. They really are. But nobody will own this the way you do.
Yeah.
So it's important to really be in the driver's seat of that, spend the time. And what I recommend is you do your own annual assessment. Like your company probably has a process, but it's important for you to think about for the next year. What do you want to look like and feel like? What are the things, while you're thinking about investments, maybe it's not your own money, it's your company's money in a course or something like that, but it's your time. How do you want to be investing that resource that is completely finite? You can't
Mhm.
get more time. So in thinking ahead about all these things, what do you want it to look and feel like? Where do you want to be a year from now? And then you can set things up to make sure that you're getting there. A
Mhm.
year passes really quickly.
Yeah,
And
doesn't it?
really quickly. So, if you're not being purposeful and planning it out and taking control of it for yourself, the time will pass and you just won't have accomplished it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where, again, you have to look in that mirror and ask yourself the questions. Do I want to be in charge of my future, or am I leaving it in the hands of someone else?
Yeah.
Right? Like I will hear often, well, I got passed up for that promotion. Okay, well, why? Right? And to your point, what are you doing to invest in yourself to help you prepare for that next level of opportunity? And sometimes it's not even promotion. It might be project based. It might be lateral moves, right? And just some of the things that I see, especially for our women that are listening, we will often pass up on things because we're not 100% ticking it off. We got to stop that.
Yeah, and it is so true. I take a look at, like, if there's a job posting and a man might say, it's generalities, but a
Yes.
man might say, "Oh, I've got 40% of those qualifications. I'm going to post for it." Good. That's great. Why not?
Yeah.
Whereas a woman is, "Oh, I only have 95%. I can't post for that." And there are times when I have conversations with clients, they're sort of stuck in that thinking, and I may even say to them, "What would a man do here?" Now, I
Oh,
coach both men and women, so,
yeah.
but there are times when think about it like someone who would advocate for themselves, or think about it like you're talking to someone that you really like, respect, would advocate for.
Mhm.
What advice would you give them? Now,
Mhm.
the good
Love
news
that.
is that person is you. So just give yourself the same advice you would give someone else.
Yes, and sometimes it's just say yes. Here's the beautiful thing, like when we push ourselves to step out of our comfort zone, we are highly resourceful. We are competent. We're capable. We can surround ourselves with people that have the skills that maybe we're lacking for a particular role. Like, know that you have that support. And if you don't have the support, you'll find that support. But I do think that's a really important takeaway from the conversation today. And sometimes lateral is equally as important as upward, right?
Yeah.
Because you learn so much more and it helps you to become that much more well-rounded for the organization so that when opportunities come up, they go, hey, Randy already has worked in sales. Randy has worked in supply chain. She has worked in marketing. So she already has a lot of the skills that are necessary for her to take on this next level of leadership.
Exactly. We have to set ourselves up to be in that position. And that, you know, yes, it prepares you for the next thing within your company. It prepares you for the next thing somewhere else, but it
Yes.
just rounds out your learning. I mean, one of the things that I know that's so important for most people in terms of their career fulfillment is growth,
Yeah.
learning new things, stretching themselves. So, there's often opportunities to take on projects good for the company and definitely good for you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really big one. And so think about that. I'm saying this to our audience. Think about that when opportunities come up, we're quick to dismiss or we don't have the skills or competencies. And it's important to push yourself to try these things and see, stretch yourself to your point, Randy, like how are we growing? Right. And whether it's internally or externally, this gives you an advantage and more knowledge that you can share in a much broader perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, awesome. So let's maybe share some stories of um, or an example of how you've helped somebody navigate that change. Because that what I see is most of the time there's this fear that holds us back, whether it's financial fear, whether it's I'm not enough. So maybe share some examples of how you've supported someone in overcoming that.
Yeah, I think those are really important dynamics. One client that comes to mind is somebody who had a very successful career. She was in pharmaceuticals. A lot of my network is there. Did very, very well, moved up to, a very responsible vice president role at a big company. Um, took and felt like the challenge was no longer there. One of the
Mm.
interesting dynamics with her, she was checking the boxes in a lot of things. She had achieved the level that she wanted to achieve. She was being compensated in a way she thought was really fair. She wasn't growing and stretching as much anymore because she got the thing that had changed, the job hadn't changed, she had changed.
Yeah.
Like when she got into what was a stretch role for her, which was really motivating, that was great. 2 years into the job, she was no longer stretching in the same way. Now there was challenges and things, yes, but she had grown into the job. And when we sort of talked a lot about, wait a minute, what is this level of dissatisfaction here? To a great extent, you've achieved everything you ever wanted. What we realized was what was missing was the next goal. She had
Mm.
achieved her dream job and hadn't reset another goal. So when we sort of got to the bottom of that, we were able to work through what do you need to build in? How do we need to reset your mindset, your thinking, your aspirations to continue to feed that need for growth, if you will. She ended up changing companies, took on a great job, great company, very different environment. It actually was not a great fit for her because the price was too high on the family side.
Mm.
And for a lot of reasons, but so it was kind of painful for her to recognize, wait a minute, this looks good on paper, but doesn't fit what fuels me, what feeds my soul. She ended, after about a year or so, ended up making another change to a very different kind of company in a different job, but her experience really serves her to it. She's able to be much more present for her family. I mean, her kids are in middle school and high school. Like these
Mm.
years go quickly. So she's made a different switch, is much, much happier, and knows that when she hits different milestones in her life, which for her is when her kids are off to college, she may make a different choice.
Yeah.
So it's been very interesting to support her through three very different changes, sometimes really hard, but you know, she's ended up in a really good place.
Oh, that's great. That's a
Yeah.
great success story. And, so many learnings from what you just shared there with regards to more is not always better, right? Really understanding what's important to you, and nobody else gets to decide that. You have to figure out, like, what is that balance, and it's not 50-50, but what are those ratios that work for your life at this time. And what I also heard is it's not permanent, right? It's not forever. And so it's okay if you try something and decide you don't like it. That's okay, because you
Yeah.
can make a change.
I mean, sometimes that's the only way to learn. And, for each of us, for those individual situations, and certainly what I worked through with this client is what was her level of risk tolerance? Because
Yeah.
making a move is risky. Staying can be risky. So let's not lose sight of that.
Yes.
What was her personal level of risk tolerance? What did she need in terms of financial support to her family, for herself, whatever that was? And then what you try and anticipate those things and make an objective decision, but then
Mhm.
it still is can I take this leap?
Mhm.
But again, there's risks to going and there's risks to staying. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of mapping out what fits for you at that particular time in your life.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I learned from my own experience, but from mentoring so many people for so many years and working with clients and leadership teams now, I used to think you could take a big risk early in your career. You just don't have as much to lose. And that's definitely true. But what I appreciate now is many people, successful people, can become much more risk tolerant later in their careers as well, because they have certain achievements behind them. Hopefully they have certain, financial cushion behind them and things like that. And I can see by your reaction, you
Yeah.
feel the same way. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have a very dear friend who started Act Two at the age of 60, and she's going to be 80 this year. And she's always saying, ooh, what's an Act Three going to be? Right. And so it's that knowing that the possibilities are there. It's something you said a moment ago, Randy, that really resonated. It's that mindset shift, right? If you put yourself in the box and you say, okay, the box is at 65, I retire. That's fine if that's what you want to do. Or you might say, oh, well, now my box just opened up to a whole new level. And what will that next phase or stage or chapter or whatever you want to call it, what's it going to look like?
Yeah.
And if you could pick a blank canvas, if you could paint any picture, what would that picture look like? I don't know, something you said earlier really is important, that are you living a purpose-driven life? Are you doing what it is that brings meaning and fulfillment and joy to you on a daily basis? That doesn't mean forever, but that means right now. Is that giving you what you need, desire, whatever, from a financial, emotional, mental, all those components?
Yeah. I think it's so important. And the way I think about balance, for example, I don't love the term work-life balance, because to me, I've always loved my work so much. It's my life. They bleed into each other, which I like. So, but balance overall, like I don't think you need it all the time, but you need it over time.
Mm.
And like people
Yeah.
will say to me, "Oh, can they'll say to me, you've had this successful career, you have a lovely daughter, you've had a long, healthy marriage, all these things. You've had it all." I'm like, we can all have it all, but that doesn't mean we can have it all at the same time.
Yeah.
So you just got to figure out what feeds you, what you need, and, work towards it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would just add to that, talk about it. Share it with somebody, put it out, right? Like if you have a dream to, I don't know, um, you want to travel the world and you decide act three or act two is to become a travel agent, right? Then put it out to the universe that this is what you want to do. And then what steps do you start taking to actualize those dreams?
Yeah.
And when we don't have dreams, similar to what you were saying earlier with this particular client, when you don't have a dream, it's what are you striving toward? Whatever that is for each individual.
Yeah. It's so important what you're saying in terms of getting it out of your head, speaking it, and having others supporting you and maybe holding you a little accountable, checking in on it. And there's an element I feel like of manifesting it. And, just a small example for myself. 2 years ago, I do a business plan for my business at the end of every year. What do I want my business to look and feel like? What are my revenue streams? What are my investments going to be? All of that. And I run my own business. Nobody's asking to see it, but it's the way I think. So one year I was thinking, oh, next year, I want to do more leadership teamwork. I love my one-on-one client work. I want to work with teams. I don't know where that's going to come from. Come January, I'm going to start, figuring that piece of it out. But for right now, I'm going to put down a revenue line. And I just put down a line. And rather than leave the line blank, I put in a number. And it was a modest number, but I put in a number. Literally, before I finished the exercise, I got a text from somebody I used to work with who said, I'm taking on this new team. I need to do XYZ. Do you do that kind of work?
Love
And
it.
it was like such a message to me of having manifest that by putting down my goal. It was just one of those moments. It was a very cool experience. And it's turned into a lot of work that I am absolutely loving.
Yeah. I love that, Randy. I think that's so powerful. And, again, when it comes off your lips and the more affirming you are with it, the more, the more uh, accountable you become to actualizing it, right? Whether you're conscious of that or not, you things start to line up. And I love that. I love that. Love that. That's so awesome. Wow. So, Randy, this has been a great conversation, and I hope our audience, you've enjoyed, hearing some of the content that Randy's sharing. Randy, just before we wrap up, what would be one thing that you would want to share with our audience that they could do today just to help them sort of kickstart?
Yeah, I think make it important, put it on your priority list to figure this out. Because you have to be intentional about it. If it's not, you're going to end up, 3 months from now and not having thought about it. But most of the people that are listening to your show, Vicky, are good at getting stuff done when they intend to do it. So make it important, make it a priority,
Love
and
it.
and talk to other people about it. It's not just in terms of putting the goals out there, but there is magic that happens between people. As smart as you are, as good as you are at figuring things out, getting it out of your own head is really, really helpful. So, pull some resources around you to talk about it and work it through.
Yeah, love that. Love that. That support system is huge in helping you in lots of different ways. Wow. Thank you, Randy. Thank you for joining us today and sharing your wisdom and your story of how you've, made this transition. So you not just talk it, but you're actually walking what you share with our audience and with your clients. And if our audience that's listening, if you're curious about your own leadership, go on to Will Empowered, that's 1L, womeninleadershipempowered.com, and take our free leadership quiz. That'll give you some insight as to how you're showing up as a leader and where we might be able to support you. So hope you enjoyed the show today. Please do share it. Leave us a review. Let us know how we're doing. We really enjoy bringing you great individuals that share their wisdom with you. And hopefully you'll take away a couple of nuggets today that you'll be able to implement and just see how that impacts your life. So I want to thank everybody for being here. And Randy, thank you again for joining us.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Take care, everyone.